Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Deeply Renegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deeply Renegade, and I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 360. Today is Saturday, March 13th, 2021, and I'm glad you could join me today. It is, I bet it's going to be a good night day. Recording pretty early, had my second coffee, lots of stuff to share with you guys. Totally forgot to count how many yards were in that game. Oopsies. Oh well, I tried. I had good points. I had a fun mail day, like all sorts of lovely things. So I do have to laugh at least a little bit because, what was it? After I finished podcasting last week, like I sat down, I just powered through my knitting project, and I was like, well, crap. I have finished all the things. All right. You know, you're in an interesting state when the doorbell randomly rings. I'll have to figure out my appropriate editing strategy for that. Just smile at that, or will it be? There just aren't too many people coming over at this point. And the people that do end up either in the backyard or whatever, down in the garage with the door open. So, as you do. But there was this hilarious moment where, like, I thought I had plenty of knitting and I could make a decision later about what I was going to start next. And suddenly, everything was done. So, wanted to be so just interesting when you, whatever, have things like that happen. I'm pretty sure that this actually was finished as of last time, and it is actually still damp because I had a giant blocking party last night. Or what have you, like, I sort of like to, get like a couple of things done when I do blocking, and I totally forgot to pull out the blow dryer and get a good whatever. So the hat is now appropriately ridiculous and actually probably super mega ridiculous. I guess it's not. Or would it be? So you can wear a beanie style with this ridiculous brown pom-pom. I also thought that maybe you can do like the partial brim action, and then you end up getting actually like a pretty nice slouch out of it, like so. We'll go with the profile view, or you can just have it be full on ridiculous slouch. And I don't know, like a full on ridiculous slouch is not necessarily my style. I do like a closer fitting beanie, but there's just so much chat. It seems like it ended up growing quite a bit in the blocking process, and so I just encouraged it to be very long indeed. But I don't know, it's not like too crazy with respect to that. But I still need to blow dry the pom-pom to floop it appropriately. That is what Susan B. Anderson recommends, and why would we deny her? And what would it be? And I have my little snap sewn on here, so if the pom-pom is in fact too ridiculous, there are different levels of existence, so not too crazy. So this was just a brioche pattern of my own design, in which I just kept knitting and recasting on until victory. Started 120, went to 96, went to 96 with smaller needles, and then ended up with 80 stitches on smaller needles. And then I did sort of the square hat decrease at the end, and I decided to have the right side of my brioche be that square decrease, because it ends up making a little X, because I thought it was visually more appealing than the other side. So, not too shabby there, but the hat's still damp. What would it be? I guess this is the challenge of living in the Pacific Northwest, or in San Francisco where the Pacific Northwest begins. It is Santa Cruz where Southern California begins. It's not rainy and cloudy enough here for it to be like proper Washington, Oregon, sort of Pacific Northwest, but might be what would it be, but it's definitely not Southern California here. But it is taking, the nets are taking their dear sweet little time to dry. I'm not even gonna bother putting this on. But I did finish my crayon etching on Saturday, shortly after the podcast was over, and it is still pretty damp, and it will be damp for at least a little bit longer, but hey, whatever. I blocked it to just make sure that the sleeves were a bit longer. Maybe I should have been blocking it to make sure the sleeves were a little bit wider too. I don't know. We shall see. Pretty happy with everything overall. I had been drying it with the very cool wrong side texture out, but then realized I may need to flip this inside out, or inside and outside a couple of times for it to get properly there. And I'm hoping sunshine helps too. When I'm looking at the back edge of this bad boy, so blocking did not necessarily clean up this edge. Really, I need to learn heel committing. I need to get over myself and learn it, because that would have solved that problem. But I went through, woven the ends, trimmed the Russian joins that were sticking out a little bit, because it wasn't totally perfect. And this is how much yarn I have left over. So I have 3 pieces of yarn with which to save for like repairs and stuff like that. So as far as maximizing the yarn available, I definitely did that here. So no, probably not much more than a yard left over, which is pretty good. Oh, I need to arrange that better. Oh well, it's like making me slightly damp by holding it. If I had been more patient and didn't already have plans, I would have podcasted tomorrow and actually waited till everything was dry. But that was not what happened. And then the final knit that ended up getting blocked was the Viajante. So I'm going to end up bringing this, or what would it be? I had planned Sunday because I'm meeting up with the Berkeley knitters to celebrate Pie Day by Edith Pie. I still need to make my pie contribution to this, but it should be lovely. We're actually going to have I'm making a savory pie. We'll actually have a decent amount of savory pie action going. I'm actually, or would it be, all I did to block it was I ran a wire through the bottom edge, pinned that straight, and then just sort of pulled the shawl against it. I didn't end up needing to wire the top edge of the lace. Near maybe getting like the barest hint of how the purple ends up looking in this. It smells like my lavender ukulele. But yeah, no, it grew a decent amount in the blocking, so it's I think it's a really nice size. It has the sparkle of the beads. It's not as vavavoom as my original Viajante was, but I am happy that the mesh looks a little bit bigger and more substantial and that sort of thing. Yeah, so after I show it to my friends, then I will package this up and send it off to my cousin. So, good solid blocking. I had been procrastinating for quite some time. And at the end of the day, I'm honestly thinking that I do actually like the pattern with the stupid amount of lace on it. Because this one is 25% lace. My original one was 33% lace, and it looks good. It looks good. I think the pattern actually calls for like 15, so whatever. Though my increase rate might have been a little bit different on it, because I'm not sure whether or not I was actually following the pattern the way I was supposed to. Yeah, and like this end didn't really need too much blocking wise, so it should be good. So full Mesa lace, Rittersporn colorway, 325 gram skein, all that fun stuff. Took like 11-12 weeks to knit, not being rigidly monogamous with the project. And I still have that basin of water for sock washing purposes, so that'll probably be what I end up doing later today, is finding all the socks and getting them cleaned up, and then I'll be done. And maybe a little bit more warm water to it. So, not too crazy there. But because I was like totally done with knitting projects. What was it? And last week I was talking about 2 contenders for projects. And what it boiled down to was that I needed something now. And I would have needed to swatch for a sweater. So what I ended up deciding to do was to start the hand-spun shawl for my mother-in-law. So what I have here is, let's see if we can make that look more appropriately purple for you guys. It is a nicer purple. In real life, it's a little bit more vivid, but there is a decent amount of gray in it as well. So this is hand-spun yarn that I made with 8 ounces of Two Guys Yarn Company in the Escape blend, which is 55% Romney, 20% South Down, and then whatever percentages end up adding up for nylon and banana. I don't even know if you can really tell that the banana's there. The banana was supposed to be pink. So this is, what would it be? Like a DK weight 2-ply that I ended up making this summer. It was for my Spin the Bin 2020. This little nugget here is what I have left of my Chamomile Connection Pullworth. This is fiber that I ended up picking up at the Albuquerque Fiber Fiesta, which goes all the way back to my first episode. I ended up spinning this on a spindle in 2015 because I had to go look it up because I totally didn't remember, and then I chain plied it on the leg drum. It was in that intermediate period. I believe that I got my Lendrum in December of 2014. So 2015 was just the beginning of my extensive field adventures. And so what I have left of this is about 5.5 grams. When I weighed it last, I had about 19 and some grams. So what this means is that I don't have enough yarn for another pattern repeat. So what's going to happen is I'm going to break this yarn. I may save it for the bind off as like a little color blip for the end of this. And then this guy, I'm going to be working as one color brioche for the rest of the shawl. So this will look somewhat familiar. So I am using the pattern motif on Pop Sizzle, but I am doing things a little bit differently because I don't have all over of these leaves. And actually it was sort of interesting because how the leaves are presenting is different depending on what I have sort of around it. And what I'm pondering about right now is whether or not I want to change sort of the pattern that I've established now that I'm going to be eliminating this green color from the shawl itself. So I have 2 sets of leaves that are growing diagonally out of the side of this. So if this is the center, I have this leaf pattern growing diagonally out of there. And then I have this center panel, which ends up having some nice like flanking stitches on it because I'm doing the increases on either side of the little panel. And then I'm also doing increases on the edge of the shawl as well. And so this is resulting in a triangular shape, though it is fairly crowded on the needles. There's just something about brioche where it's just so much easier to work it when it's crowded because it's a lot easier to go back to the beginning of the row in that situation. And so it is nice because you can actually have this little pattern sort of grow out of nowhere. And so what I'm debating about right now is if I want to make it a little bit more crescent-y by adding more increases to it. It'd be the case where right now I have 4 places of increase. So I could end up changing this to be like 6. That could be festive. Whatever. I'm trying to debate if I want to add pattern to this so you can sort of see the slow color changes of the green side, and then you can see how the pattern ends up looking on the purple side. So we're going to lose some contrast because it'll just be all this yarn all the time, but you'll still be able to pretty clearly see the pattern, I believe. So because this guy is mostly Romney, it isn't as soft and delightful as the Polwarth is. The Polwarth was 250 yards of a worsted weight in like 4 ounces, like 3.9. So that's why I ended up putting it at the top because I figured that it was much more next to skin friendly than the Polwarth was. It's not like, or the Romney, it's not like it's terrible, but it's definitely not merino. The Polwarth you could mistake for merino. But I do think that the purple ends up being very, very interesting. So you can see all of the subtle color shifts in the purple hand spun. It's very cool how the yarn is colored. And the way the yarn is colored is only achievable by blending dyed fiber. And that's been my obsession lately. um, you only get it to look that way because it was dyed before you did subsequent preparation steps. So in this case, there is this more like solid toned gray purple, which is one of the plies because I ended up blending it into a bat because the banana was driving me a little bananas. Like, it produced a very interesting result, but that didn't mean that I enjoyed spinning it. So what I did was I took the 4 ounces, I blended it into, I made it a much more smooth blend, and then spun that as you do. The other one is adding sort of all of the texture and color that I'm really enjoying. So, what would it be? What would it be? And the sum of those parts I think ended up turning out really cool. So there's that. But I haven't quite decided what it's going to be or how I'm going to proceed once I finish this next pass. So it'll be the case where I'm planning on cutting this now and going from there. So I don't know if I'm going to keep the pattern as established or add things to it or something. Just haven't figured out what it is that I want yet and how it is that I want it to look now that it's going to be changing. And at this stage in the game, yeah, I have 158 grams remaining of this. I had about 228 grams when I started. And then I had, whatever, probably 110 grams of the green when I started. Oh, the other thing is that the green is chain plied and this is a 2-ply, but I don't think it really matters for the purposes of this shawl. It's more like getting the weights close enough. And the only reason that these ended up getting sort of bagged together was they ended up next to each other when I did the great stash photo back in January. And what would it be? And I like the look of them together. There's like a little bit of purpliness in places in the green, so I figured that that would end up going together really nicely. And I'm pretty happy with how everything's turning out. So I may need to like just do some sketching and figure out what it is that I really want to do here. I don't know if I want to, say for example, move where my increases are or sort of keep this central panel going. I have like an option where I could sort of make the repeat larger. So it'd be the case where instead of making 5s, I could make 7s as I transition into this purple. But I figured that the transition needs to happen. And I've gotten quite a bit done on this project. So at this point, we're talking about, what would it be? Like pretty close to like, it's probably like a 1.5 skein shawl at the moment, and I have 1.5 to go. Rough numbers. Not that this purely purple section is going to be quite as big for longer rows now, further distance, all of that fun stuff. But yeah, no. The cool thing is going to actually be that I won't need to purl anymore, because once I transition to once I transition to the one color brioche, then every row is a right side row, which is really cool. It was like every fourth row is a pattern row, but every row is a right side row because you're just working back and forth at that point. So that's really cool. And that's why I need to transition right now, because I need to start on the right side row to begin that transition. So there is that. I don't know whether or not I want it to be the case where I just like totally change the motif completely and have something that looks more like flowers after doing something that looks more like leaves. Choices, decisions, all of that fun stuff. I'm actually sitting at this bad boy. But yeah, and it may be the case where I end up just working the bind off of the shawl or the last row before the end of it with this guy, just to sort of tie it back together again and use as much of the yarn as possible. At this point, or would it be? Could be the case where I don't want it to awkwardly change colors in the middle of the repeat, so there's that piece as well. So it's slightly awkward because I would like to keep going on the project. Maybe this is the case where I take a pause and wind yarn for a sweater. Maybe. We'll see how things go. Figure stuff out. So, moving on to spinning. I have two things to show you this week. So, and both of these are fractal samples that I ended up making at the Clemis and Clemis carding for fractals class that I ended up taking last January. So this guy here is the finished BFL. Both of these skeins are still a little bit damp. So this one has a gradient going on, so you can see this end here is more white and this end here is more brown. And then the overall variatedness of this is actually coming from the row logs that I made by carding on the drum collider and then pulling off, what would it be? And then pulling off. I really did actually like how these row logs came together, so sort of like another notch in Molly doesn't need to own the blending board. That I actually like spinning with and working with the, oh, there we go. One fiber on the wrong side. Another notch for I don't need to own a blending board. The drum carder is my blending board. So there's this guy. This guy is now loose and flowy, maybe almost like a quarter of a twist at the end. All BFL. Would it be pretty darn fine? I'll have to, maybe I'll figure out what the yardage ends up looking like. I don't even, I suppose that it probably ended up shrinking quite a bit, so it may be the case where it's worth it to reskein. I don't know. I have my skein binder here. Let's see, like, yeah, no, there is a little bit of shrinkage going on here. So if we end up, but it's not like totally crazy. I am curious about the merino though. It feels like the merino ended up poofing out a lot. So BFL skein's done. And this, so that was my 2-ply fractal. This is my 3-ply fractal. So this is actually 3 ounces of fiber. So 1 ounce of blue merino, 1 ounce of yellow merino, and 1 ounce of white merino. It started off as dyed fiber, and you can sort of see like a hint of its gradientness holding this way. So there's a section of this that's mostly white, mostly yellow, and mostly blue. And so this is comprised of 1 long color repeat for a ply, three color repeats for a ply, and then like 6 or 7 for the final ply. And the 6 or 7 was comprised of prologues, and the other guy, oh yeah, there's something funny going on here as I'm trying to get this back on. So let's do this. Like trying to get this skein nice. Okay. So put one here, put one there. And this is the skein that I should have counted but forgot. But I'm definitely getting the vibes that this ended up shrinking quite a bit, which means that it's probably slightly more usable as yarn, but yeah. So we're probably talking like a good somewhere between 15 to 25% shrinkage in yardage. So as you do, it's also still a little bit damp as well, but not too crazy there. So I still need to count this, figure out the yardage, but maybe I'll just reskein it and count the yardage because that will be a little bit more accurate. But it is really cool, or would it be, the overall impression, or would it be, so you can definitely tell those distinct yellow, blue, and white regions which come from the long ply of the fractal. But what's cool, which some of this sort of comes from the blending, is that you end up getting actually a pretty decent impression of green as well. And that comes from when the blue and yellow were blending together. And that impression of green is coming from that yellow fiber and blue fiber being blended together. Some of it is coming from yellow and blue being plied together. And then sort of those transitional colors, the in-between zones. So it's pretty cool. And then you don't end up getting maybe as much of that impression when you're doing like the blue and white, because that would just be the case where you're just seeing whatever different tints of the blue, which is sort of cool. And then there isn't any yellow and white blending based on how I bridged everything together. So it'd be the case where the way I ended up spinning it was yellow to yellow, blue was in the middle, white at the end, and then I'd start the next one with white. So those colors are more pure than the blue is, which is interesting as well. The choices we choose. But it did end up poofing up quite a bit, which is probably a good thing because it was pretty freaking fine. So yeah, I'll have to, or would it be, I haven't yet posted pictures for Instagram. I may just sit down and reskein this bad boy just so I can get a more accurate yardage count on it. Like, I don't feel too bad with how far my DFL was off, but this is like way off. Would it be? And I may need to scour this guy again too. There's definitely some regions in the yellow that still feel like tacky lanolin. And this is actually my first time spinning, would it be, spinning from something so close to the animal when it comes to merino. But it is very soft and buttery and fun and cheerful with all that yellow. Try not to make too much. So yeah, no, this one's a really fun skein. And then once I know the yardage, I'll maybe know a little bit more about what sort of project I'd like to do with it. It's definitely totally unlike any yarn that I have in the stash right now. But if I was to guess, we're talking light fingering to lace weight 3-ply here. And this guy, I think based based on its grist is also like on the lace end of 2-ply. Are they coming out? Yeah. I'm not sure whether or not I would end up using them together just because the BFL is not as soft as this merino is. So, as you do. And maybe I'll try to get a close-up for you guys so you can actually see how cool this turned out. Yeah, it's looking color-wise much more pure here. Like this end is definitely much more green, but it's maybe not looking as green on the screen. But pretty happy with how this ended up turning out. This was one where I was pretty sure it was going to be color-wise to my taste, and like a fun project overall. There's definitely some parts that look like fingering on here, which is exciting as well. What would be all of these projects I've been spinning on the large whirl of my regular flyer, but they're just still turning out so fine. Oh well. So, I did end up pulling out my next project, and I don't know, I'm debating whether or not I want to do like an Instagram live, sort of just going through in my process of doing some drum carding and blending of it together. So, ooh, it's gonna fall. So what I did was I took out, oh, I found it in a bizarre place, I did. So, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel for all of my Clemis and Clemis class samples. So the fractal class was what I did last January, and then this is Florida Cracker that was in the Shave 'em to Save 'em class that I took last March, that I took last January, which was super duper fun, really great class. Really looking forward to when whatever Henry and Roy end up offering more classes in the area, because there are some other classes I haven't had a chance to take yet. Or would it be like there's like a advanced drum carding class that I haven't had a chance, and then I think I will have taken them all. But this was the case where the classes were offered at a discount, they were local, and it was the first time that they taught them. So it was a case where, what would it be? It was a case where the fractal class was the first time, and then the Shave 'em to Save 'em was the first time. And I took this because this was like preparation for my eventual drum carding of my Romney lamb fleece that I got at Rhinebeck in 2017. So this is the Florida Cracker. It was super full of veg. It's still pretty full of veg, all things considered. Or there's still a decent amount of vegetable matter in it, but it cleaned up pretty good. You can see the dark spots are a little bit of veg. It's very soft. Whatever, a nice crimp, very gorgeous looking bat. And what I'm going to do is blend it together with some other fiber that I ended up getting. So I have two of these guys, but I think what I've decided to do is I didn't want like a 2-ply marl, I don't think. So I think I'm going to end up carding these one more time and blending them with the other fiber that I've selected. So here's that. It's now out of frame. A little bit has fallen on the floor, but it shouldn't be too terrible. So I got this fiber as a prize for a spin the bin, and it was labeled as Romney from handpaintedYarn.com in the fruit salad colorway. The only thing that I believe is that it's the fruit salad colorway. Well, it probably did come from hand painted yarn, but it was a handwritten note. But there's just no, or would be, like I'm knitting with Romney right now. I know what Romney feels like. This is not Romney. This is fake Romney. But it should be a really good compliment to the Florida cracker. Because it is actually a pretty fine soft wool in bright cheerful colors, and by blending them together I will end up getting what would it be, a fun and cheerful bat out of it. So I took the warm colors and separated them, and I took the cool colors and separated them. So this is a sort of foresty dark green, and this is like a bright lime, and then the other guy is like, this guy is sort of a red leaning fuchsia-y magenta color, and then this is like dark egg yolk orange juice sort of color, and then you can see they used to be connected as such. And then another piece ended up falling off, so I need to like sit down with the scale, weigh everything out, basically separate this into sort of four groups. So I should have about 8 ounces of fiber. I can pretty comfortably fit 2 ounce bats on my drum carder, so I just need to get it into 4 piles, so I have 2 ounces to begin with. And then I'm planning on, would it be making sort of like a layered vat with it. Then after I make that layer, so that may be the case where I end up splitting it, doing something where I end up pulling all of my, I guess I can call it, or would it be like make layers of red, layers of white, layers of orange, layers of white, and do something like that, so that I can make a fun bat that way, and then do something where I have like layers of white, layers of bright green, layers of white, layers of dark green, so that I can end up sort of blending all the fibers together. And then I'll have to decide which way I want to go. If I want to have like a warm skein and a green skein, or if I end up applying them together into would it be some sort of like crazy fruit salad yarn? I don't know. Not sure how it's going to turn out. But the Florida cracker is the fiber from my spin the bin. It'll count for two projects in my spin the bin, and the fake Romney isn't in my bin, but has been, or what would it be? It was a fiber where it's like, what am I going to do with this one? So I think that the brightly colored stuff is going to make it a lot of fun. It's all pretty soft, and I'll be able to make a really cool skein with it. And this is just my thought process of, for most cases, 4 ounces of fiber isn't good for much more than like a hat project for me. Like if I want to make something bigger, having 8 ounces makes a lot more sense. And fun with the drum carder, because I do enjoy having fun with the drum carder. I went with the I went with the Florida cracker first, just because I think it'll be a lot of fun to spin. And then my next project after that will be my Leicester long wool, which is like a lovely gray, and my Dorset horn, which is dyed sort of blues and grays. So I'm planning on putting together a cool skein with that. And then it'll be the case where I'll probably have to figure out what type of project I'd like to make it into. but would it be the Leicester long wool and the Dorset horn are much more coarse fibers, so figure six. But I think it'll look really pretty together with the grays and the blues, so what would it be? I think I'm incentivizing the coarser fiber with the fact that it's blue. Yeah. We'll figure out where it goes from there. But when I do those two projects, then all of my samples will be spun. There will be more room in my life for other things. The ridiculous pile of stuff will not be stacked quite as high because I will have one less box up there. And I can briefly. So this ridiculous pile you see here, that US mailbox, yeah. And it's like, we don't need that stack to be that high. And we'll just go from there. There won't be, or what would it be? It'll be the case where it looks like I'm going to be finished with my bin well in advance of time, and that I can figure out from there like where my spinning intentions are pointing. Because my last two projects are fiber optic merino silk. What would it be? Like ink to powder. So that one is going from like a dark navy to baby blue. And then, what would it be? And then the other one is my Carl the Fog hat, which I've pulled out some Jacob to knit for that. And then doing a little bit of blending to have a delightful, what would it be? Shades of Gray. A Shades of Gray project. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And that would be the case where that's like a primo Fluff the Stuff project as well. So as I'm continuing all of this happy hand spun knitting, like this one is counting for Fluff the Stuff. Would it be? I'll count my merino skein as Fluff the Stuff because I started in like February. But would it be? It's always fun to have. Would it be when you end up getting like a really nice yarn pattern match, that sort of thing. But I'm sort of wishing that I split this up as fractal to sort of mix up the blues and the greens, but whatever. Molly of 2015 wasn't thinking about those things at the time. I just had yarn of no particular pattern repeat. I'm pretty sure I spun that end to end just based on how the color blocks look. Yeah, and we'll see where things take me from there. Would it be? I guess it would be the case where contemplating if I end up like immediately, or whether or not like I immediately wind yarn for my hinterland or not. I don't know. Or maybe I'll take a photo and post it on Instagram. About if I want my cotton linen weekender or my would it be hand spun hinterland. I don't know. I think this indecision is why neither is cast on moment, with the bonus that I wouldn't have to wind yarn for the weekender, but whatever. Is it too bold to have that many hand spun projects? Would it be? But definitely still feeling Sweater Mojo just because, like, there's so many sweater quantities. More than a quarter of my stash is sweater quantities right now, so I better hop to it. Or more than a quarter of my yarn stash is. So, what would it be? That's where my brain is right now. In exciting news, whatever, like my nephew was born this week, so that was very exciting. This was the sister who wouldn't tell us, or would it be she hid the gender, so Araya is born, and we are very happy. And then 2 weeks ago, the other sister ended up having Madison, so yay! It was the case where she swore she was going to have a boy, and Madison is a girl, so. But what would it be? We were just laughing about it because, like, the name Madison and Araya, like, would it be definitely sound, or would it be, they could be boy names or girl names, so it's just entertaining there. So very excited for them. There was like a family Zoom on Thursday, but I couldn't go because it started during my working day. California problems. While 7 p.m. Eastern time is very reasonable, it's only 4 p.m. Pacific, so. Oh well, such is life. I'll survive. Or I need to convince people to do things on the weekends, who knows. But we'll make it work. So, all sorts of knitting excitement. Long episode this week, but there was a lot to talk about. Finished objects, new beginnings, all of that fun stuff. What would it be? And I would say the other thing is, whatever. Just mentally being in a weird place because of all of the, whatever, 1 year anniversary of lockdown nonsense. So, would it be this time this year? I was getting dim sum. Oh well. Such is life. These things will pass. I did finally actually visit a doctor for my physical, which then beget more doctor appointments, as you do. So now that I actually have like a physician in the city of San Francisco, I'm hoping that I'll be able to, whatever, find out when it finally is my turn for vaccination, and actually would it be being a part of the system and getting that taken care of. So there's that. So what would it be? When you're comparing then versus now, there's definitely a lot more hope, but just as the sun breaks through the clouds. Oh, well, I already know what I'm naming this episode. It's Fake Romney. I knew I was naming it Fake Romney yesterday. So, what would it be? So, I hope you all are holding up and, what would it be? Not being too overwhelmed with everything that's going on in the world, but it's okay if you feel that way. I feel that way too. But yeah, so with that, I hope you guys have a lovely week, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week. So take care, guys. Bye-bye.